Konami continues to communicate about their newest format, Genesys. Today, I'm going to be discussing what the changes mean, what the communication holds, and going over YCS Bologna. Let's get into it. 2 days ago, Konami updated us about Genesys at YCS Bologna, and then the next day, discussing about what's going to be changing in the December points list update. Both of these communications are, of course, very good overall for the public understanding what is going to be happening with Genesys format. However, I also want to go on and give a huge shout out to the people at Bologna who ended up taking first place. Very little information overall about what has particularly gone on with these particular deck lists. These unknown duelists in top 8 did not share much of their information, but the top 4, or at least 3 of the top 4 did. And with this information, we were able to understand that Psychics got second place runner-up at a deck price of $30. Crazy. Secondly, Onomad ended up getting top 4, of course, with its strategy involving very similar to the one that saw the last win, with copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole, as well as the copy of Trap Tricks with Fleesia, and alongside a package of a number of rank 4 extenders that did not require too much, including Circular Diameter. Very interesting stuff there in order to go into the rank 4 stuff of the Circular Diameter and the Laplation as well. And the first place winner, of course, going to Lunalight, setting up multiple Liger Dancers turn 1, or just one if need be, in order to go and outlast the opponent overall. And in any kind of format like that, it is very strong to go ahead and face against. You're going to have to deal with quite a bit facing down that type of monster. That being said, a lot of times, I've heard a lot of negativity surrounding Genesys format overall. I wrote a lot of thoughts, not only from what I've seen of player sentiment, that I ended up sharing with some of the people also in the Genesys Discord, but specifically more of the people in the mod core. But a lot of it has to do with Radiant Typhoon being a bit of an issue when it comes to it's very repetitive, it keeps doing the same thing over and over again, going first being very strong in the format, Dracotale being secretly strong compared to people where they might have thought it'd be, Banish continuous spell traps being floodgates, a lesser hit of this thing that has been discussed overall, but still needs to be talked about, is Rescue Ace Impulse being pointed as high as it was, and basically falling off the face of the earth, where I thought it was a really cool idea for that cantrap to be in the format. And finally, while Nib being 5 points is a mixed bag, Droll being 5 points has become criminal, and without any sort of way to comment against it, any ways to play against it, a lot of times you're faced behind a full setup end board, plus Droll and Lock Bird, or if you are going second, you are able to, the reason why you're able to win is because you drew Droll and Lock Bird. I know this from my experience at locals playing my favorite deck, Ninja, in which case I will go ahead and share very soon comments. I'm telling you, I'm going to be sharing it very soon after this next pointless update, because it's about to change in 5 days, and we're going to go and talk a bit about that later. So discussing more about what I think the overall format is, I think it's good, of course, as a concept, and I think that there are some kinks that need to be brought out. I think that this set of decks that are being right here, these 1, 2, 3, these slices of the pie, I do not like. I like this slice of the pie. Psychics overall is a fun sort of strategy, but Punk also kind of sets up a turn 1 end board that is very too strong comparatively to what I hope to see for the format. And hopefully we'll see some points lowered for a number of different hand traps that are able to exist in the format overall, because, well, without them, going second really sucks. It just does. But let's go ahead and discuss what's going on at YCS Bologna. Genesys at YCS Bologna was our first chance to see how European duelists tackled Genesys. Today we'll talk about differences in Europe's first qualifiers and Invitational itself. So the differences between that I saw, I've read both of these previously. The differences between YCS Bologna and the ones that we've had the previous Invitationals was that the previous Invitationals had you have to do 3 in a row guaranteed, whereas this one had win 3 of 4 in order to get it, and the best prizing got it overall, which allowed you to go and take 1 loss in general in any of the rounds prior, while still being able to do something more along those lines. So you could be a little less consistent, in my opinion. If you have to go ahead and win 3 games in a row, you are doing the safest thing possible for both going first and going second. But this best winning 3 games out of the total 4, you could lose 1 game, makes it so that way it is more likely that you might actually deal with something that is a little less powered. Hard to say. But either way, the big differences in deck selection was Lunalight. As was stated, 4 decks were never qualified before, including Informal Nobilites, Unchained Archfiend, Heraldic Beast, and Lunalight itself. And Lunalight is crazy. It won the whole damn thing, which is insane. The current invitational format is going to be retired in the new year and replace the same format used in the YCS events as Genesys moves out of early access to get plugged to our standard tournament systems. This will affect the tournament viability or lack thereof of certain decks and will be taken into account moving forward. So what this means is that the best of one sort of single elimination format is going to be removed, and we're going to be having Swiss rounds in general when it comes to the overall Genesys format. I think this is a good idea. I think that's going to make it so that people want to play more and be able to play at longer periods as opposed to losing immediately and then leaving and then having to go ahead and restart the process of getting into a pod all over again. Playing all 4 of your rounds every single time unless you are X2, I think it's going to go ahead and make things a whole lot better. And have a lot more skill-intense stuff when it comes to playing on the line. That sort of feeling feels really good. Oddly enough, Archmage losing a lot of ground makes a lot of sense, mostly because Nib went out of the format, and a lot of that was supported by one of the people who is very popular in Genesys format, Distant Coder, who has had a lot of success when it comes to the Archmage archetype. I'm a big fan of Archmage as well. I don't like it so much in Genesys, but I like it more in Standard with the K9 package. I love playing that 60 card list that I have seen on you can maybe see on my channel. But with Archmage going out of the way to falter because the 2 best things to counter it are lower in points in the overall meta, Droll and Nibiru. I think that it definitely makes sense for it to see way less play comparatively. Dracotale as well is still one of those things that I had made mention way prior that I think is going to be gladly hit more. And unlike the standard Radiant Typhoon decks, Radiant Typhoon Runic has an excess of removal, draw, and search power. So, Pittsburgh, there's only 1 card that was used in 30% of more of all decks submitted for qualifiers, Droll and Lock Bird. And in fact, 54% of all possible copies were registered. Where the players were actually unique, 63% of all possible copies were played. So if you went in and you played again, you sort of like didn't count towards this amount, but oddly enough, like this is crazy. Like if you were a unique player and not just a player who once again entered another regional, you had there was 2/3 of a chance the player was playing Droll. And that's a lot. There's a lot of people who want to play their pet decks and just threw in Droll and Lock Bird because they knew it was good. But yes, the person who was writing the blog considers anything over 33% for a generic card to be an outlier. And the truth is that at Bologna, it only happened to 35%, which is still over the 33% for the generic card to be overtaken. But it wasn't seen as much play, oddly enough, and I like to think that that has something to do with Dracotale. With Dracotale becoming more and more popular and recognized as one of the best cards in the format overall, that deck doesn't do anything. That card doesn't do anything to Dracotale. So you probably see a lot less of it, especially in decks that are willing to go ahead and play it. So if if you're planning on going against something like one of the better decks being Dracotale, that could be a reason why. The 4 advanced popular cards that were previously forbidden that people played were Pot of Greed, of course, Mirage of Nightmare, 1 player opted to play a pair of Heavy Storm, and Rongominiad. So this card should not be at the price point that I think that it is currently, and I hope to see it increase in the future. Otherwise, we're going to continue to utilize this within the next point list, and I do not want to see that happen. I really, really don't. That being said, they did mention next that they're going to hit some things from Phantom Revenge as well in the next point list, and that's going to be happening on the 15th of December to recording 5 days from now. So probably going to be on the 4 days from now from what we're saying. So what are we expecting in the points update? Well, as they previously mentioned, it's going to be the official launch date for Phantom Revenge for the 19th for us, or the 17th at our OTS, meaning that they're going to be taking a lot of this different information that they've received, and they're going to be applying it to this, as well as some pre-hits for Phantom Revenge. Based on results from YCS Pittsburgh, and please, if you are at all playing in any form of local content, please be sure to go ahead and keep submitting deck lists, and post them on social media using the hashtag Yugioh Genesys. They actually check that, surprisingly, and they tell you that they actually check that. Census data for severe performance outliers includes Droll and Lock Bird. Those support criteria and fundamental principle Genesys card seeing excessive play goes up, other cards come down, while LTKs are boxed out. Everything listed below is a part of our initial ongoing early access data. Another way to put it, everything listed below is going to be a performance outlier unless we hit it now. That's what early access is about, searching up the overall initial points list. Once we exit early access, the purely census approach will take over more, although we'll still need to assign some points to new cards right out of the gate, which isn't perfect. See branded below. So they're going to be hitting a number of the different cards from Fan of Avengers, including Hekahan's Gigas, Xeno, Clip, and Q. Now, if we go to the Forbidden site, duelingbook.com, I can go ahead and take a look at those Hekahans and those cool tune cards are in just a second. Dododo Warrior as well being hit makes a whole lot of sense. It's one of the best decks in the format. Of course, it's going to go ahead and see some form of play. I hope that it will not be so like problematic that's going to be a problem, but you can imagine that it's going to be the case. Here we are. Spoiler alert for my Enneacraft future deck profile. Clip, of course, is one of the cards that was mentioned in here. If I go ahead and take a look. Yeah, Clip and Q. So, Clip lets you synchro summon during your opponent's turn by main phase, by revealing it, special summoning it, and then synchro summoning using a tuner. And if synchro summon, you can banish one card random from your opponent's extra deck face up. This could hit a very key player inside of any normal deck, and so this is going to be a bit of a problem. And Q is the same thing, with activating two cards to the top of your opponent's deck and banishing one of them and place the other on the top or the bottom. Make it so their top deck is going to be a brick, which would be a problem overall, especially if going second is such a problem currently. Enneacraft, of course, can't be played in Genesys format. Sad. I really do like these cards. I think they're really cool. And there was Xeno and Gigas. So Xeno is the fusion monster that states you could during the main phase quick effect, you can look at two random face down cards in your opponent's extra deck, plus summon one of them to your field. So, being able to rip out your opponent's extra deck out at random and then just take one is crazy, of course. And Gigas is being able to excavate the top three cards of your opponent's deck and special summon them, special one to your field and shuffle the rest into the deck, being that you will take whatever your opponent does. I think Gigas will still see some form of play depending on the point amount as a hand-trapped card. I think that the Hekahan's cards overall should be a good... It should be fine to play within the overall strategy as overall strategy in Genesys. Just not so much in Chimera because Chimera's hit a decent bit. But there could be a case where you could still play some of the cards as well if you really want to go ahead and stretch it. Maybe play a couple of the Jowza, Xeno, and then play like a few of the Yaddle and Ibtel alongside the traps. That could be something you could utilize there. Cards that insulate turn 1 combos, as we saw previously with the Onomat deck, its whole plan is basically to go ahead and set up any rank 4 that it can beforehand with Traptrix Ralphisia and Gravedigger's Trap Hole, so that way no matter what it is you have out of your whole hand, remember, you play with 5 cards in Genesys format, and if you're going first, you can use 4 of those 5 cards plus a hand trap, and you'll be just fine. Or perhaps you'll draw them via the copies of Dugaris, or something along those lines. That being said, this is going to be a major factor in terms of the cards that do not want to be seen playing. If you're trying to counter the counters, that's not fun, especially if you're going first. You're trying to insulate going first, insulating that turn 1 combo, not great. Hopefully, they're going to talk about this more in another article. Towers monsters, or monsters that are pretty much immune to other card effects, like Liger Dancer, and one card that I was glad that they decided to hit, Super Quantum Mech King Great Magnus. This card, Magnus, is Super Quant. Magnus, if you don't know, is very hard monster to summon. You typically have to go out and utilize the field spell. However, if you have 6+ materials underneath it, it's Mistake. So, and if it has 4, it's Towers at 3,600. Very hard to out, and then being able to shuffle back any monster on the field if you have 6, saying that you can, okay, cool, I'm fine with you going to the end phase, going to not being able to search anything during my main phase, detach one, shuffle one back. I don't care if you search anymore. I'm going to kill you now. Not very fun to play against overall, but I'm glad they're going to be considering to have they're going to crank up the cost of these monsters, which is good. Extra deck monsters that get you another card, including Gaga Girl. Pardon me. And wind up carriers at Meity are cards that I have to double check about wind up carrier Zenmaity being free in Genesys format. Free, by the way. Free. Special wind up from deck. Free. For any rank 3 deck. Free. Yeah, that makes sense. They want to go and hit that. As well as the copies of Gaga Girl being able to, if an Onomat piece is underneath it, be able to search another Onomat piece or a Exy spell trap or nearly anything. And finally, themes that weren't tempting. This is going to be the big one for me. Especially Dragon Maid, Sword Soul, Tenyi, Snake Eyes, Ninja again, and maybe Centurion and Samurai, although they're trickier. So Dragon Maid and Sword Soul make a lot of sense. Those cards are fan favorites for especially newer players and players who happen to like the sort of art style of these cards, especially for Dragon Maid, of course. Tenyi alongside Sword Soul makes sense. There's not a lot of ways to go into the Tenyi monsters without their link monster effects, so bringing themselves out as a first turn and then not being able to synchro them off, they have to be essentially extenders only. Snake Eye, of course, being for rank 1 spam, but you can realize that sort of with Mimighoul if you really want to, which is cool, but I don't see that really seeing too much play. And finally, ninjas. Holy shit. Like, I'm going to be real with you. I've had a lot of success at the local level with ninjas. This is mostly from the fact that I'm playing against a lot of players who are of the newer to the game. However, I think that you do not want to sleep on the fact that these cards are very, very good in heavy engine decks. You don't try to play with a lot of hand traps. You play with a minimum amount. You play them with the breakers of Book of Moon, Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, and you play Small World as well with a special bridge that I'll get into when I make my deck profile when the new list comes out. Reweighing some point distributions. The adventure cards are an example of this, including Rite of Emissary and Water and Change to the Temple are at 5, while Wandering Griffin Riders at 20. Gladiator Beast and Crystron will be looked at for this. And branded. The Fallen and the Virtuous costing a whole lot is not fun. I will be real with you. Yeah, the Fallen and the Virtuous when it comes to the Genesys points toggle. Oh, wait, 100. Wait, I didn't have the Genesys point toggle on. Hold on. White Up Zen mains is 33. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry. My apologies for spreading misinformation upon the internet. But, if we go back, sorry. The Fallen of the Virtuous costing 15, while every other Fallen of Albaz fusion costing, what, 10 apiece? Or sometimes even more, depending on the amount? Yeah. 10, 10, 20, 10, 10, 10. All of these causing so Albaz does not have the ability to, like, play is not great. Whereas you could just play, like, have a heavier count on the Fallen of the Virtuous and make it so these generic cards would be lessened. I think that would make a lot more sense for the Fallen of the Albaz deck. Any sort of branded deck would make a whole lot more sense, especially with the fact that Sanctifier is at such a high price point, it may not see some form of play. Although you could still lock if you really are an asshole. This is an example of how when we hit cards before they're out, we might guess wrong sometimes. We're happy to correct that with the next list. So this is an important note that they are going to be willing to discuss and change the lists and admit their wrongdoings. And they're going to communicate that as well, which is really good. I'm letting you know, that's really good. I need you to understand. We can go ahead and complain. We can go ahead and discuss that this may be an issue. However, them being willing to, 1, admit they're wrong, and 2, discuss it with us is important. The last time that we have dealt with this as a community, before this event, when we did this, they were a lot more petty, and they stopped communication with us entirely, thanks to the oversight of the OCG. So now that we have this opportunity to examine this, discuss this, and be more civil, we got some opportunities. And finally, generic housekeeping. There are several handy generic cards that see almost no use of their current values that will drop. Figure out how gradual to make these declines. If a card isn't played but then drops to 0, suddenly everyone will play 3, and then it just yo-yos back and forth. There's a sweet spot somewhere. Next update after this one will happen around the release of Bupo, Burst Protocol. There are no official large-scale Genesys events between now and then, so the primary purpose of that update will be to add points to cards releasing in Burst Protocol and adjust other costs based on addition on the addition of B Pro. Sorry, not Bupo. B Pro. B Pro. So what are my thoughts? I'm glad they're going to be hitting Droll. I'm glad they're going to be hitting a lot of these cards that have been coming to light. But there are a number of things that have not been addressed in these 2 blog posts, and hopefully they will soon. Those being, of course, going second sucks. And a lot of people have been proposing their own ways of improving upon this. My suggestion has been to either allow for breakers to become more standard within the overall metagame by lowering their points overall, or making it so the engines are very heavily pointed to the point where they cannot play anything else other than if they want to really like show in and go forth for like, I'm winning if I'm going first and that's it. And then not being able to go ahead and interrupt the opponent at all. That could be a thing. Peeps has suggested making Fuwa go down to like a very minimal point amount to make it so it is the ideal way to play against half boards. And I think that's a fine way to go about it, and I think that having decks needing to pivot between those is going to be a good thing. And probably overall, I think that Fuwa and Purulia need to stay at... I think Purulia needs to stay at 10 because every deck normal summons, and that's just annoying to deal with. But Fuwa... Now, Fuwa's a different thing. I think that honestly could go down to 5 points. It'd be at the same level as Droll is currently in the current format, making it so it going second would be something that could have more fun and interactive gameplay, while utilizing it as a sort of centerpiece for dealing with the side in and out boards without having to feel you're absolutely awful by having to play this stupid card. Plus, make me so that way you would play more engine v engine decks if you have a heavily pointed engine alongside 3 Fuwalos. That could be a great advantage for you, being able to go ahead and play a large engine deck that could break through boards going second while also playing going first by having your Fuwa draws on top of it, similar to that of the previous Rescue Ace Impulse, drawing you 2 more engine cards to get you into something to further go ahead and beat over, while also having, I believe it was a 2200 body. So, with that being said, what do you guys think should be changed in the next point list? Me personally, I have a lot of opinions, I have a lot of thoughts, but I want to hear from all of you. If you like this sort of news update involving Genesys format, please be sure to like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. My name has been Doc Conrad, Yugioh, and if you like this kind of content, share it with your mother. Okay, that's all. Bye-bye, everybody.